Hi, this is Audrey Whittington with Realtor.com, and welcome to the home buying process from A to Z. Today, we have Brad Sivert with us, and he's the general manager and head of mortgage for Realtor.com. So Brad, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And I think the first thing we're going to talk about is a little bit maybe about how you come to this personally. Like, what are your thoughts about the mortgage process? How's it affected you, and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, the mortgage process is key to anyone who's trying to buy a home and get into their dream home. It is the part of home buying that is probably the most stressful and the least liked. And if you actually go back to the Latin definition of the word mortgage, it means note until you die. So the definition of
That's great.
is already negative to begin with.
Yeah.
But for me, it's something that really holds true. Unless you're independently wealthy, it's really the gate that you need to get you into your dream home.
It's true. Everybody needs a mortgage, right? I mean, very few people pay cash outright, and that's that. So I don't know, you probably don't know the percentage off the top of your head of how many people get a mortgage, but
it's over 80% of people end up getting a mortgage.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So some of the factors to consider when you're looking at a mortgage, like what should you consider? What do you look at?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing really is to baseline yourself and to understand, to know what your buying power really is. And that really comes down to your affordability or your budget. These are all interchangeable terms that you actually look at.
Sure.
And there's a couple key factors that you're looking at there. The first is how much down you're gonna make, so what down payment you're gonna make on this house.
Right.
And then secondarily, what the monthly payment will be, because the monthly payment is what you're actually gonna have to pay every single month.
Sure.
The down payment's a one and done thing. So these scenarios, plus where you kind of fit in your life cycle, they're all what make up the major components of knowing how much, what range you should be looking at for a home.
Well, I think that makes sense because some people look at it that they've saved the 20% and that's that. They're good, but they're not really thinking about all the factors and all the things that go in to make up a payment of renting versus buying. And some people figure, well, I just got a new job, I'd like to buy a home, but they're not really factoring in that they need the down payment.
No, that's correct.
Okay, so what are some of the tools that we can use to figure out what can we afford?
Sure. So a lot of websites out there have affordability calculators. And what the affordability calculators really do is they take the two main components that lenders are looking at, what your loan to value ratio is and your debt to income ratio, and they try to kind of humanize it in a way that you can understand.
Right.
So for example, if you make $60,000 a year or $5,000 a month, the ratio that's used for debt to income on an average is 35%. So based on that, it's suggesting you should be buying a home with a monthly payment of $1,750. And assuming you put 20% down, it does the reverse math. This is a $250,000 home. And so that's really the range you should be looking at based on the income that you make.
Oh, that's really helpful. And what about the debt?
Well, you have to consider the debt, and this is why people like affordability calculators so much. It gives you many ways to figure out what the best scenario for you is, how much down payment you want to make, what debts to include in there, because when you take it to the next step of talking to a lender, they're going to run all these scenarios for you.
Right.
So it's better for you to be in control and to really know what numbers are impacting your affordability or your buying power, however you want to look at it.
Because they're going to look at all those factors, right?
They're going to look at everything, and for them, it's a risk-reward kind of ratio.
Right.
And so they're looking at everything more often than not from a conservative lens.
So part of what we're doing here is we're budgeting, really, right? So we're using these tools to budget. So tell us a little bit about how that process works.
Yeah, everyone has a different budgeting kind of methods that they use.
Yeah.
Some people plan and save for the down payment over time. Others, it becomes more of a emotional decision, like I'm absolutely in love with this house, I'm gonna do everything in my power to get it.
Yeah.
And so people have different budgeting tools, but simple things like affordability calculators and rent versus buy calculators that exist really simplify it for you in a matter of minutes to kind of at least level set you as to where you should be looking so that you're not living far out of your means.
Right, so really, if you're heading to Realtor.com, in some ways you might want to go to the calculator first to see, so you don't waste your time looking for a house, candidly, you can't afford, or houses that maybe you can afford that are a little more expensive.
Yeah, and one of the keys when using affordability calculators like ours is knowing the difference between how much you can afford versus how much you should afford.
Oh.
And so in a market like this today, it sometimes ends up being bidding that happens at the end of buying an offer. So if you can afford up to $250,000, and that's your max that you'll be able to afford,
yeah,
and you get to the table and you make an offer for $250,000, but then it comes back at 260,000,
Yeah.
you're kind of not really set up for success. So knowing how much you can afford, it's kind of the maximum, and you should kind of live in that range. And the trade-offs you're making when you're buying a home is where the home is.
Sure,
Location. Does it have a nice yard? Is it in a great school district? How many bedrooms does it have? How many bathrooms does it have? And just like everything in life, you have to weigh the pros and cons versus the actual cost. Everyone would love to drive a Porsche, but guess what? You can't always afford one.
Yeah, I love this. I think that's a really important point, that even though the affordability calculator says 250, maybe you're smart to look at 225 and leave yourself a little breathing room. You might want to buy some furniture, and as you point, you might get into a bidding war.
Yeah.
Well, this was really helpful. Thank you so much for joining us, Brad.
All right.
This is Audrey Whittington with Realtor.com, and thank you for joining us with the home buying process from A to Z. We hope you'll check out some of our other videos.